These are the Backrooms questions that keep me up at night. Starting with number 1, there is a purple table that Narin mentions at the beginning of the Everything Must Go video. And the video will probably be released pretty soon. But basically, at the beginning of the video, Narin is talking to the other async researcher. And the async researcher says something like, hey, come look at this. And he's talking about the Everything Must Go signs. And Narin says, hey, it's not that purple table again, right? That thing creeps me out. And the other guy was like, no, that was a desk, but it's not that. I want to know what that purple table was. Because it, like, when people mention things offhandedly like that, it runs wild in my mind. Because what could be so creepy about a purple table unless it had some kind of characteristic that was menacing or ominous, you know? Maybe this purple table had like a presence that was off-putting. Almost like it had not necessarily a consciousness, but it just had like a vibe to it that maybe it was... Like if you've ever seen a possessed object, maybe it had some kind of energy like that. And some people are kind of taking the idea that Kane had proposed. Well, it wasn't really a proposal. He mentioned that when Clark and Pirate Clark were off having their adventures, when the movie's focus was on Mary, Kane in the director's commentary said that Pirate Clark and Clark were encountering table crabs. He says that there are tables that they walk around like crabs. And maybe they bleed also. Who knows? But apparently Pirate Clark hated them and he would just try to squish them a lot. But yeah, the purple table is weird in my imagination. I hope we see something like that, but I don't think we will. It'll just probably most likely be one of those Backrooms mysteries that just never get answered. Unless Kane decides to explain it offhandedly. Another thing I think about is that in the movie, something I didn't notice the first time watching it, and I watched the second time, when Clark first goes into the Backrooms and he sees the caveman cutout and he follows the cords into that room, he finds a false wall, and inside of that wall, he finds a duffel bag, and it's Narin's duffel bag. But the thing is, Narin didn't leave it there during Everything Must Go, and he definitely didn't leave it there at the beginning of the movie. So this duffel bag was already there and it was hidden, which begs the question, why? Why did they hide a duffel bag? And it's not just any duffel bag, it's a duffel bag of like sensitive materials, because it has a VHS of the Pitfalls incident, and it has a floppy disk titled Ivan Beck Brain Pathway. Like, what does that mean? And so what some people have theorized is that it's possible that after the Peter Tench incident, where Peter Tench escaped out of Async and he was either killed or he somehow just is running loose out in Standard somewhere, a lot of the Async workers, and there is a video where they're kind of rumbling to themselves about how messed up it is that Async did all that stuff to Peter Tench, because they did hold him in captivity for like who knows how long, and he went crazy. And so they think among themselves, what's to stop them from doing that to us? Because this is a top secret organization. So I'm sure some of them are at least planning to be whistleblowers, or they at least want collateral in case one of them ends up in a position similar to Peter Tench, where Async wants to get rid of them and they need blackmail, basically. Like if Async captures one of the workers and is holding them hostage, one of the other workers could be like, well, we have these materials and we can whistleblow if you don't release our coworker. But the thing is that duffel bag is gone when Mary goes to that room. So it's possible that Phil, the guy who was monitoring the camera in that room, saw that Clark had uncovered that duffel bag, or maybe Phil's in on it, who knows? But he saw that Clark recovered that duffel bag and didn't take it with him. So maybe Phil went inside and picked up the bag and now he has it, which could be a plot thread in subsequent movies. Because a lot of people did have, or they at least were looking at it like a plot hole where Clark finds a duffel bag takes Narin's name tag and then nothing happens with that plot thread. So some people are like, oh, there's probably like a deleted scene or something like that. I don't think so. I think it's a plot thread for the sequel or the series. One thing I noticed is that you can only access the back rooms through the floor, or if you are in like a basement type thing. And I don't know why that is, because every time, at least in the series, every time someone has found a null zone, it's always through the floor or it's in the basement. Like if it's kind of more of like a doorway thing, it's in the basement. And I don't know why that is, but I know that the complex itself does use floors in, how can I word this? Uses floors to iterate upon its memories. So there is a floor, and in the movie you see the camera going down, and every time it goes down a floor, the memory that the complex has of an area becomes corrupted. But I don't know the exact mechanism of like why it works that way, obviously, because it either hasn't been explained or it's something that you have to guess yourself how it works. It's just something I noticed, that like floors are very important for some reason. And another way this gets brought up is during Everything Must Go, because we see that things that are fused in the wall, and fused furniture is a relatively new concept within the series. You don't really see that until Static Dead End, which is the last episode in the series, where they come upon this room and there's like a table in the wall, and there's a couch in the floor or something like that. And during the movie, you see this a lot. You see a lot of captain steering wheels in the wall. You see like cabinets in the wall and stuff, or like super extended. But in Everything Must Go, we find out that things that are fused within the floor do not continue. They only go down into the floor like about a centimeter and they get cut off. But things fused into the wall, you can cut the wall out and the object continues through the wall. That's like the central discovery of Everything Must Go. And I'm sure it'll be released soon, so we'll all be able to see that and analyze it and stuff like that. But yeah, that's just something I noticed. Another question I had is, why is there a Colona outpost? Is it just a code word, or does it have a deeper meaning to it? Because Colona Outpost is where Everything Must Go takes place, and it's where the beginning of the movie takes place, where Narin is running away from Pirate Clark. And it's a totally different biome, because we see these arch doorways, just a bunch of archways. There's even little ones like in the wall toward the ground. Why? Why? It's obviously another biome within the complex, but what does the name Colona imply? So I thought that one of the possible reasons is that these are patterns that show up in Colona, BC. Because Colona is a real place. Colona is, I don't want to say it's close to California, because it's not. It's very far away, but they're both relatively on the East Coast, because Colona is in BC, and the series takes place presumably around Silicon Valley, something like that, in California. So these are both in the West Coast. But what I'm thinking, if there is a real connection between the name and the complex, is that it's possible that they are finding certain objects, furniture, architecture within the Colona outpost area that match up with the real life Colona. And what's amazing to me is that if this is going on, then that means the complex is, I don't want to say tiny. It's not tiny. It's just more like you can walk on foot from the threshold to the Colona outpost. Or at least you can take that little golf cart thing that they drive around and you can get there. But it could just be a name. It could just be a name for like an outpost that they have. But also that implies that there may be other outposts too in other biomes, which is so interesting, because I just I want to see all this other stuff, and I don't know if we are going to get that, because, you know, Kane is busy with either Backrooms 2 or the series, and it's like, are we ever going to get it? I know Kane has an ending in mind, so he doesn't want to just drag this out forever, but yeah, like it's a question that I just think about. Another question I have is, was the reflection of the furniture store close to the threshold? Because when Mary runs away from Pirate Clark, they have a caveman standee there hooked up to the gas canisters and stuff. And when Mary's escaping the furniture store, she sees like a little crack that she can get out of there, and Pirate Clark doesn't fit. But when she gets through the crack, they blast her with that gas, and then they drag her through the threshold. And I don't know if there's a lot of time between those two things, because in every async video that we've seen of them doing research, they don't go too far. They're kind of like close to the threshold. If they are far away, it's not, so it's always within walking distance or within golf cart distance. And the furniture store seemed very close. It seemed close enough that they could pick her up and just kind of like drag her to the threshold. So it's very perplexing, the layout of the complex, because I just feel like the movie, it doesn't contradict any canon, really. It's just, it gives you questions about the distance between things. I'll just leave it at that, because apparently this is happening in the, all of the movie happens in the Colona branch, maybe. It doesn't seem to happen close to the threshold until the very end. Anyway, on the subject of Mary, what's gonna happen to Mary? Are they gonna let her go? Are they gonna give her a job? Are they gonna somehow fake her death like they did with Peter Tench? Or are they just gonna keep her missing because she's already missing? The thing is, Clark is also missing, technically. And those two, if those two are missing, then someone's gonna see the connection between them, because they are client and therapist. So I don't think they can afford to have police looking around in the furniture store looking for Mary and Clark and then coming upon the null zone, the portal to the Backrooms. So I don't think they're gonna kill Mary. I think what's probably gonna happen is that they might hire her. They might have her as a therapist at Async. She already knows a lot about it. She seems level-headed enough to the point where she's not insane. She's not going insane from the shit she saw. I think it would be smart of them to just have her sign like an NDA, give her like a nice paying job, let her go back home. When the police come and investigate, or they come asking her about Clark, she just gives like some bullshit like testimony, and then Async buys the furniture store to use it as another outpost location. I think that would be the smart thing to do. If they don't do that, then I hope they do something better than that idea. Not that I'm like, my idea is so great that they have to use it. It's just, to me, that seems like it would make the most sense. But anyway. Why are they building an elevator down to where the life form is? Do they want to capture it or kill it? What I think it is, at first I thought it was about the life form. I thought it was 100% about the life form, but there is a whiteboard drawing of the neighborhood during the episode where all the Async employees are talking to each other about how Async did that fucked up shit to Peter Tench. At the very end of it, there's a whiteboard, and it has a plan of what they're gonna do. So the reason they're building the elevator down to where the life form is not necessarily for the life form. It's just that the area that Marv encountered, the neighborhood, the red neighborhood, they want to study that because that biome is so different from the yellow hallways that we're used to. It's literally a neighborhood, and there are like stars, and they're like it's at night, and there's red light too, and there's houses there, and there's a street. So it's obvious that they would be very interested in what is going on there. So on the little whiteboard plan, they're talking about looking into that specific house that Marv went to, and they're saying maybe we got to bring a gun. We're gonna have to bring some equipment. We're gonna bring tripods, which I assume if the life form is no longer there, they're probably gonna set up tripods there with cameras just to monitor the area in case it comes back, or to observe it. And obviously the shotgun is for if the life form's still there. They also want to take the trees that are in the neighborhood and compare it to trees in standard, like similar trees, which is very interesting to me because trees for me in the series are right now the most interesting thing, and also the thing that we are most likely to get some answers about, because we've seen in Everything Must Go and Lighting and Tile Survey that they are willing to take apart the Backrooms and study it to like a molecular level, to a microscopic level, where they're like analyzing the materials of things and the serial numbers, and they're looking at bacteria under a microscope and stuff. So I mean, these people are scientists, so it's obvious that the next big thing that they're gonna do is see like, how do these trees work? Are they planted? Are they connected to soil? Are they just in the ground? Like, not with no root system, like they're just there, like stuck in the ground? Because as we've seen before, things that are phased into the ground don't go far into the ground. They're just like, they're cut off. So are these trees planted? Are they potted? Is there soil under them? Or is it just floor? Do they grow? Is another question. Do they, like, can they grow? Another thing about this subject is that like red light is used in indoor plant growing. Is that hydroponics? I feel like hydroponics is more about like the water that you're using to feed the plant, but it could mean like indoor plant growing. I'm not too sure. I don't grow indoor plants, but I know red light is one of those things that plant people use to grow their plants, because it's the part of sunlight, it's the wavelength of sunlight that plants like the most. They respond to the most. Chlorophyll loves red light. And it does like UV light. It likes all like blue light too. But for the most part, red light is kind of like the meat in the sandwich for a plant. And I think that may be the reason why red light is used whenever we see plants. When we see the Christmas tree in the movie, red light is there. When we see the neighborhood, there are trees and red light is there. When we see the red city, there's red light all over the place and there's trees all over the place. But I don't think it's just for trees. I don't think that's the case. I think it's also red light can grow still lives. I think that's possible, because someone in my comments was pointing out that, hey, every time there's red light, there's still lives in the area too. I mean, not in the neighborhood, obviously, but like in the movie, there are like the floor statues, which may or may not be like still lives being born, and there's actual still lives in the Christmas room. And the Christmas room is so crazy. Can I just say that? Because when Clark, it's not just the Christmas room, it's like a open room with like a Christmas tree in the middle. But when he's running away, there's like other weird stuff that I didn't really get a good look at. It may be Christmas decorations, it may not be. It's just there's weird shit in there before he gets to like the pool room area. But anyway, let's move on. Speaking of the Red City, what is the nature of its light source? It seems that it's a giant spotlight with a red light bulb, but it's just so bright and we never look straight up at it in the found footage. So maybe in the future, we will be able to see where the light is coming from. Maybe an async researcher will point the camera up towards the red light source and we'll kind of see like what it is. This might be asking for too much, but possibly they would, I don't know, climb their way up to it or get to a point where it's accessible and try to get close to the light source, the spotlight thing, and observe it or take it apart. It'd be crazy to turn it off, but yeah, I'm very confused about the light source. It seems like it would be something very big, something we have not seen yet in the Backrooms so far. The only thing I could think of as a light source that is as big is probably that skylight from Found Footage 3. We don't know how big that is. And it also seems that like red light not necessarily signifies, but it is kind of, it gives you the impression of it being nighttime, because in Found Footage 3 there is that room with the skylight and that feels like daytime. But yeah, that's just my observation so far about the Red City light source. Archibald Sutter, everyone's favorite half chair, half man, half lamp. Something is up with that guy. He's cool. I like him. He doesn't really do much. He just turns on his lamp. But the most interesting thing about him is that he has fashion and decor that points to him being from the 1920s. And there are probably two explanations for this that I could think of off the top of my head. He's either some kind of like museum display sculpture or something, like a diorama type thing that the Backrooms mistook for a real person and gave it life in a way. or he's actually from the 1920s or like Victorian era type time period, which is like both of these are equally interesting. I think it's more likely that he is actually a real person from the 1920s, but it makes you wonder how. Because this is before the 1970s, obviously, when Ivan Beck made contact with the Backrooms. And we haven't seen anything this old so far. We've seen things from the future, relatively speaking, because Ravi is from the 90s. And when he's walking around, he comes across a COVID poster from 2022. And that's easy to explain because the backroom time is convoluted in the Backrooms. But we didn't know it went backwards also. And even then, it's like, how is it possible that it got a impression of somebody from the 1920s? Was there some kind of null zone in the 1920s? Is it related to cameras? Is it related to electricity? Because both of those things were relatively new around that time. It just makes my mind go berserk because it's really breaking what we thought we knew about the Backrooms. Kane always said, or he's said before, that the Backrooms have always existed. But that doesn't mean that there's always been access to it. And that's what everyone assumed. Everyone assumed that when Ivan Beck did whatever the fuck he did with that green glow in 1970 with the solar flare, that was the first time anyone ever made contact with the Backrooms. And apparently that's not so. If this is actually a person from the 1920s, which I think it is, because if you look at the lamp, it's a Victorian style lamp with like frilly stuff on it. His chair looks very antique. His dress is like a suit with a popped up collar, which is not very common. It was common in the 1920s to have a collar like that. And his tie is either a weird fucking looking normal tie that just has like two tongues, or it's a colonel tie, which you would be able to see on Colonel Sanders and like cowboys, like Doug Dimmadome. He has a colonel tie. It's basically a bow tie with like two tongues on it. But yeah, it's mind-boggling. Do the life forms have a vulnerability? Do the life forms have a weakness? I don't know. Can you put like antibacterial soap in a water gun and squirt it at them and kill them? I don't know. Would a shotgun do anything to hurt them? They're most likely a colony of bacteria. It's not just one organism. So they might be like the hunter from Halo, where it's literally a colony using a scaffolding, which would be a human body. They're using that as a scaffolding to hold its form together. And so if you shoot the scaffolding enough, then the bacteria itself kind of loses its integrity and collapses. And maybe the bacteria is harmless when it can't puppeteer dead body parts. So I don't know how exactly the life forms work. All we know is that they're fast, they can mimic human speech, and they're very strong. We've only seen a life form kill a person once, and that's in the first video. And they pick up Kane, the protagonist. It picks him up by the throat and lifts him up as if to do a choke slam. And we never see a life form do that again. So I don't know if that's gonna stay canon, because Kane has said that the first episode is semi-canon.
I actually. So in the original short film I did, I played into the video game idea a tiny bit more than I have wanted to since. I wouldn't recognize that first video as like holy canon in every single way to the rest of the body of work. It's a little bit like a pilot.
I can see why he would say that, because there are things in that episode that don't line up with the rest of the canon. For instance, the camera falling at the end, like there aren't null zones really in the bottom of the Backrooms. It's always in a ceiling or on a wall. We have yet to see a null zone that appears from the ground, and I think maybe as time went on he didn't like that idea, because then it contradicts how the Backrooms works, in the sense that every level you go down, every floor you go down. I don't want to say level, because then it's like, it reminds me of those like shitty Backrooms levels that's not Kane Pixels stuff. But yeah, like every floor, the memory gets stranger. It gets corrupted. It gets deformed a little bit more. It gets misremembered. And so it wouldn't make sense to have a null zone on the ground. But anyway, let's move on. Will we get a report about Pirate Clark's autopsy? That's what I want to know. I feel like that would be a perfect series episode of them just talking about Pirate Clark's fucked up body and showing the x-rays up close and showing what the hat material is made out of. Like they cut it up and, you know, they examine it under a microscope and they're like examining the fibers and they're comparing it to like the Pirate Clark costume that they found in Clark's furniture store. I think that, like, I would love to see an episode about Pirate Clark's autopsy, and I think we could get one realistically. I think even it would make for a great series episode as well. Like if they're actually gonna do like a streaming service series on the Backrooms, the Pirate Clark autopsy would be great. I would love to see that. Another question I have is, what is Async's ties to the US government? It's obvious that they have some sort of relationship because they did have a government employee come down to discuss things the day Peter Tench broke loose, or no, the day he reappeared. That was the day the U.S. government official showed up. And when they are, again, the episode where the employees are talking amongst each other, they mention the U.S. Department of Energy. And they're like, do you think the Department of Energy has the resources to like kill us and stuff like that? And they're talking in reference to Peter Tench. So it's the Department of Energy that is interested in the Backrooms, and that makes a lot of sense because whenever there's like physics discoveries, that falls within the domain of the Department of Energy. And at first I always thought, oh, it's DARPA. DARPA is the one that's interested in Async, but DARPA is more about applied sciences because DARPA is like they create weapons, they create cutting edge technologies for the military. It's a Department of Defense branch, and they do a lot of secretive stuff as well. A lot of things they do is top secret. So I was like, oh, that's perfect. That would fit right in with what the Backrooms is doing. But the thing is, the Backrooms is too unknown at the moment. It's too theoretical. There isn't like an application yet. Yes, they can store stuff in there. They can probably put weapons in there. They can hide it from other countries. Like if we can hide our nuclear weapons in the Backrooms, the government would like do flips. They would love that. They would love for our nuclear weapons to only be accessible from like one little entry point, because that means if you hide all of our nuclear arsenal, all of our materiel for war in the Backrooms, then that means the enemy can never bomb it. They can never find it unless they had a way into the Backrooms that was close to where we are storing the nuclear warheads and stuff like that. But no, it's the Department of Energy, because I mean, the Department of Energy is very interested in the idea of energy production, because as we've seen, the Backrooms does have energy in it. Personally, what I think happens is that whenever there's a solar flare, it interacts with the magnetosphere and stuff, and this creates the green light, the aurora borealis and stuff. But as we've seen in my last video, that's like green dragon energy that is somehow channeled and used to create the Backrooms itself. I don't know how exactly that happens. I just know that solar storms, solar energy, all of that stuff, it's always tied to the Backrooms. Like there are points in the series that line up when solar flares happen. And the Overload episode where Ivan Beck first discovers the Backrooms, that was a solar flare event. But the Backrooms itself produces energy. It produces electricity for lights. There are outlets in there, and it's seemingly limitless. So of course the Department of Energy is going to be interested in this stuff. And I'm sure further down, like as Async makes more discoveries and perhaps is able to harness some of the phenomenon going on within the Backrooms and things are more understood, maybe that'll be the point where DARPA comes in and says, okay, we have like applications for this stuff. And also the Department of Energy has a lot of labs. I don't know why they're so well, they have a lot of labs because they do physics research. And so things that would defy known physics, such as the Backrooms, that would obviously be very interesting to the Department of Energy because they have a national labs infrastructure. But anyway, Another question I had was the seagulls in the movie, are those real or are those still lives? They seem real. They don't seem like fucked up like still lives, but the thing is they keep showing up. How are they are there null zones in the sky? How would that work? That would be crazy. That would be crazy if there are null zones in the sky. Like what happens if a plane hits a null zone, but the whole plane won't get sucked in, will it? I mean, it might, because as we've seen in found footage too, the girl who was using the tape measure, she stuck her tape measure in the little 4x4 hole in the ground, and she got the whole area around her got like sucked in to the back rooms. So it is possible that if there is like a little seagull sized null zone in the sky where all these seagulls are coming in and a plane hits it, it's possible the entire plane would get sucked up into the back rooms and just cause like the worst tragedy ever seen within the back rooms. Like it'll be like 10 9/11s happening within the back room. Maybe not that bad, but like it would not be a pretty sight. In found footage too, we saw a car crash in the back rooms, and that was pretty like messed up to look at. Imagine a whole plane crashing into the back rooms. All the life forms that form out of that would be insane. But another thing we don't know is that if they're like, let's say a plane crashes into the back rooms and there's all these like corpses and dead bodies, whatever. When a plane crashes, there's like an explosion, there's like fire. So if the bodies are charred like barbecue and they're not just like decomposing, they're not just like dead, does that stop life forms from forming is what I want to know, because it feels like it would. Another burning question I have is, what the hell is up with all the Chinese stuff in found footage 3? What's going on there? So I did a lot of research into the Chairman Mao era of China. Didn't find anything. Didn't find anything that could possibly be tangentially related to the Backrooms. Yes, he is called the Red Sun of China, which there is a red light in the Red City, and that appears in found footage 3, but I do think that's just a coincidence, or at least it's like a thematic type thing. It's not literal. I don't think China has anything to do with the Backrooms. Even though it does show up quite a bit, and it does show up in Everything Must Go. So what a lot of people are speculating is that within the area that the Backrooms takes place in California, that area, there is a very, very prominent Chinese community. It's one of the biggest Chinese communities in America. It's like 1/3 of the city over there is and I'll put like the stuff on the screen, the statistics. It's like 1/3 of the area is Chinese people. And so that's probably a reason why there's a lot of Chinese stuff in the Backrooms. We've seen the poster of Chairman Mao. There's the poster of like COVID awareness or something like that, and that one's from 2022. And there is the statue of Guan Yin, which is the goddess of mercy, and notably she has her back turned on Ravi, which is so ominous. And so like I love that in this series there's so many like thematic things that aren't necessarily like, it's not literal, but it is a thematic motif that happens. If you saw my last video, that's all over the movie, and it's so subtle too. It's so fucking subtle. I love it. I love the way Kane takes like thematic things, but also like the main story is grounded in reality. It's very scientific. But yeah, the Chinese motifs is more than likely just due to the fact that there are a lot of Asian people living in the area the Backrooms takes place, because every connection I've tried to make between China and the Backrooms has been just such a stretch. People are saying that there's like bunkers under China, like every town has like these bunkers from like the Cold War era where people would have to like hide under there, but I don't know. I think that's kind of a stretch to me. But like there is a counter argument due to the fact like Chinese Americans don't really worship Chairman Mao, or they wouldn't hang up a picture of Chairman Mao in their house, unless I don't know Chinese culture that well. You know, maybe there are Chinese Americans who love him. I don't know. Let's move on. What was that thing that broke out of Ravi's house at the beginning of found footage 3? What was that? What was that? So at the beginning of Found Footage 3, he hears like rustling in his basement area. He calls his landlord and says, hey, is anyone doing work today down there? They say no. And he's like, okay. So he goes down there and he like uses his big guy voice. He's like, hey, is anyone down here? And he looks around and there is his sliding door that leads out to, I guess, his backyard or something, but it's shattered and it looks like something broke out, and who knows what it was. It could have been a life form. It could have been a still life. Something broke out because the glass was on the outside of the door, apparently. And then he gets sucked up into Found Footage 3. But it's like there are so many compromising things that are running wild in in standard in such a small amount of time. And Found Footage 3 does take place within 1997. So that's 7 years after 1990. But during 1990, missing persons cases were like skyrocketing. So is it still that way, or did Async find a way to stabilize the null zones, or are they growing wildly? Because you got Peter Tench running around outside somewhere, possibly, if they didn't kill him. You've got that thing that broke out of Found Footage 3 running around. Like, who knows what else has gotten out? Because if there's a null zone and a person, let's say a person goes through a null zone and there's a life form like just waiting there, like what's to stop the life form from just leaving the null zone and getting out into standard? You know, there's a lot of like the null zones are going crazy also. That's another thing that is getting very out of hand for Async. But yeah, like that's what was that thing? Another thing I wanted to look at is, why are there contradicting physics in the Backrooms? Why is it that when Clark went into the pool rooms, Kat was calling him and she was saying, hey, she was yelling at him. She was like, hey, Clark. And he's hearing her from across a wall. And he's like, what the fuck? Like, why does that happen? And also in Found Footage 3, Ravi is literally talking to the owner of the house that he's in, most likely. And they're occupying the same space somehow. And then the owner of the house kind of like, he starts fiddling around with the wall or something, and maybe he sees like a rupture to like the back room. Maybe he sees like a null zone and he gets sucked in to the back rooms, but maybe to another time. It's just strange. It's very strange how the physics work. And some people were explaining it to be kind of like a video game, because there is a lot of video game physics going on in the sense of like no clipping, and the fact that the Backrooms is kind of like when you get out of the barriers of a video game where like they want you to be, if you get out of those barriers, it gets very weird. And Kane based a lot of the vibes on Gmod, and Gmod is very much, it has that feeling of like you're not really meant to be here. This is outside of the zone of play for the video game. And in video games, you can program certain surfaces to be more like one-way type things. So a lot of people were theorizing like that's what happened. The Backrooms programmed one side of a wall to be a window, and it programmed the other side of the wall to be like a straight up like wall, which is creepy, because who knows how many times people have gone through the Backrooms and they're being observed, but they don't know it. They're being tracked down by like a life form or a still life, but they can't see that they are. It's weird. Okay, we're coming up on the last few questions. This is more a question about the audience of the Backrooms movie. Why do some people insist the redheaded still life is Barbara? It is not Barbara, dude. It is not Barbara. It's okay if you believe that is Barbara. It's okay. But I will make a case for the point that it is not her. So the reason it is most likely not Barbara is because she doesn't look like Barbara. And yes, she is a still life, but you know, still lives do resemble the person that they become still lives of. So this person, whoever I believe that the redheaded still life is a still life of, she's an older woman. Barbara she's like in her early 30s. She might be even 30. So she's not old. She's not super old. I mean, maybe if you're like 21, you consider that old. But I mean, wait till you get to this age, buddy. You're going to realize that it's not that old. So Barbara is like 30. She's not very wrinkly. The redheaded still life looks like to be an older woman. She's like in her 40s, maybe early 50s. She's just a somewhat older woman. Like I still consider 40 to be somewhat young. You know, it's not middle age. It's like approaching middle age. But she is like, the redheaded still life has like wrinkles on her neck, and that's just what older people have. The redheaded still life has straight hair, and it doesn't look natural. It doesn't look like it's natural hair, in the sense that it's like she's not naturally a redhead. But Barbara looks like she has natural red hair, and it's curly, like slightly curled. Also, Barbara doesn't have colored eyes. The redheaded still life has like blue eyes. So I think Clark, he happened to find, like, she is thematically tied to Barbara. She is not literally Barbara. And so Clark finds this like redheaded still life. He decides to keep her, and he tries to like train her, and much like Barbara, he cannot get her to do whatever he wants, because I mean, like, he shouldn't, but he seems like he feels a loss of control. He feels emasculated by this like still life because she resembles Barbara. And and like this still life is just, she don't give a fuck about him. Like she's just kind of like, she got wrangled by Clark and she got nowhere else to be, so I guess she decides to just stay there. She's only really afraid of Pirate Clark, and a lot of people use that connection to suggest that is Barbara, because Barbara's still life would run away from Clark's still life. But I don't think that's the case. I think the still lives respond to each other better than they respond to real people, like people from Standard. And also, still lives seem to have their consciousness not in one time period. It suggests that. The example being that when the redheaded still life first sees Clark, she's grabbing her scalp and she is running towards him like with malice. So it seems like she already knows what is going to occur, because to her it already happened. And I really don't think the redheaded still life is Barbara. Another thing about like still life consciousness, which I don't know how this would work. Oh no, I think I do actually. I'm like thinking through it live. Okay, so the still life that finds Ravi is theorized to be the still life of the dad that Ravi talks to in the house, and then the dad, gets sucked up into the Backrooms. If that is the still life of the dad, the reason he is chasing Ravi is because he subconsciously blamed Ravi for putting him in trapping his real life counterpart in the Backrooms. And that's the reason why this still life is so hostile towards Ravi, because it is possible that this still life came out of the house, or was born in the house that Ravi finds Waldad. And so the line of questioning would be, why would the still life hold a grudge of the real person? That wouldn't make sense, because they're two different things. But as we've seen in the movie, and this is something I just thought of right now, Pirate Clark seems to recognize Mary weirdly. He seems to have a subconscious awareness of Mary, and that's why he reaches out to her. I don't think it's just like he's trying to eat her. I mean, yeah, he probably is trying to eat her, but he has this saddened look to him that expresses Clark's inner true feelings. Pirate Clark he just has this sad, pathetic look, and it's just a reflection of who Clark is on the inside, because Clark projects himself as this grandiose, he's the corsair pirate, he's the king of the Ottoman Empire, but inside he's actually very frustrated. He is looking to Mary for answers. And so Pirate Clark physically is trying to get at Mary for whatever reason. Who knows what he's going to do when he gets her. I'm not trying to suggest anything insane. I just mean that he has a subconscious draw to Mary for some reason. And I don't think it's just she's meat. She's food, because he was already eating Clark. He literally started chasing Mary with intent. And I think regular life Clark, his tie to Mary is within Pirate Clark. I think Clark does see Mary, his therapist, as some sort of savior type figure, maybe. Maybe he just really does believe that you should believe this. If you're going to therapy, you should believe this, that if he keeps going to go see his therapist, his life will be fixed. And it's not necessary. Like, it is like Mary says, she cannot fix anyone. She can only show people their problems. She can only get them to look at things a certain way, and then they fix themselves. It's always change comes from within. But anyway, let's move on before I get too sidetracked here. Clark had a lot of imagery in his mural about electricity. How does the Backrooms manipulate the electrical grid? We know there's a connection. We know there's a connection between the Backrooms and the electrical grid. We just don't know exactly how it works. And the reason for this is because when Ivan Beck first comes across the Backrooms, he comes across the green glow, he is in a power station of some kind. This is the overload video. And there's a solar flare and the power station gets overloaded. So that's like already, that's a tie between the Backrooms and the electrical grid. What the nature of that connection is, I don't know. But Clark saw it too. Clark knows from being within the furniture store that the back room somehow is using up the power in his store, and it is driving his bill like sky high. And the back rooms is like turning on the power when he's sleeping there. It's sucking up power from the lights. The lights are flickering. So he understands that there's some kind of connection. And it's weird because the mural has a image of a object. In this case, it's like a house. It's like a house thing, and it shows I believe it's called homotheity. I think it's homotheity. So it's like basically like a telescoping of sizes. And so it starts off big and then it telescopes to like a really small size. And we see this in the Everything Must Go video. If you haven't seen it, you probably will soon. But it shows, and this is a phenomenon that appears a lot in the movie, that there is like an object that the Backrooms creates, but then it creates little copies of that object, and they just get smaller and smaller. So he draws this in his mural, and when something gets so small, he turns it into an electrical symbol, like a little lightning. And you can see on his mural, everything that has to do with electricity is kind of, it's like painted in blue. And so, yeah, like there is some kind of connection between the Backrooms and the electrical grid or electricity in general. I don't know what it is. I don't know the nature of it, but there is something there. And I think it'll become more clear as the series goes on. The next question is Ivan Beck psychically connected to the Backrooms? I think he's connected to the Backrooms psychically somehow. Red, the Backrooms theorist, the lore theorist, she is very good at what she does. If you want to find her, you can type at Little Red SM. She is a very good Backrooms content creator. She basically figured out, or at least noticed, that there is some kind of psychic connection between Ivan Beck and the Backrooms, because there is a music video on the Not King Pixels channel. And the funny thing is, like when I first got into the Backrooms, I kept getting suggested videos from this channel called Not Kane Pixels. And I was like, why does it keep suggesting me these like fan music videos? I don't care about stuff like that. I don't care about like like, sorry, I don't care about like fan stuff. Not that it's bad, not that you shouldn't like it. I just I like to focus on official stuff. So it kept recommending me these videos from Not Kane Pixels. And then I found out that is actually his second channel, and he just named it Not Kane Pixels for some reason. But yeah, and I don't know how this got leaked, but he makes these music videos, he puts imagery on it, and some of that imagery does have lore implications for the series. And so what Red found is that there is a deleted or leaked mashup of a music video or two songs, and in that video it shows Ivan Beck kind of being transposed onto background imagery. It's like his outline, his shadow is being transposed onto background imagery, and kind of merging. Like there's imagery of like merging as well. And then at some point in the video, one of his eyes glows green. And so this suggests that there is some kind of physical connection between Ivan Beck and the Backrooms. Not just that, but in the movie, Clark comes across the duffel bag. We're back to the duffel bag again. There is a floppy disk titled Ivan Beck Brain Pathway. What the fuck does that mean? Why is it on a floppy disk? Someone knows. There's some. I don't know how much like common knowledge it is that Ivan Beck has a psychic connection to the Backrooms, but someone knew enough to put it on a floppy disk. So I don't know. That's one of the questions that will probably be answered, but it is also one of those things that like it's probably not going to get answered till like the end of the video series somehow. So take everything I just said about the Ivan Beck brain pathway and throw it in the fucking garbage, because it's very likely that it says Ivan Beck admin pathway. So what does this mean? Well, someone on Reddit about this very subject said, his name is Ruiner9. He said, 15 years in IT experience here, so of course I'll explain. A pathway backup would be a backup only including the branch of the file tree relevant to administrator access, excluding any folder pathways used exclusively by other departments. So basically that just means like Ivan Beck's personal stuff on the computer. It's not some kind of psychic program that he uses to interface with the Backrooms, although that would be super cool. It would kind of be out of place because the Backrooms so far does not have any overly sci-fi. I mean, besides the threshold that opens the portal, it doesn't have like cyberpunk type shit is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, it is a little disappointing that it most likely is not his brain pathway. It's most likely some technical workspace stuff on his computer, which is fine. And it still lines up with the idea of the duffel bag having compromising materials. And it still doesn't take away the fact that there was a hint of him having a psychic connection of some sort to the Backrooms itself. So the last question that I have is, will the complex and standard become indistinguishable? And I didn't really think about this until someone brought that up in the comments of my last video. And they said that it's possible that Peter Tench went crazy because he realized that there isn't a difference between the complex and standard. And this makes a lot of sense because in my mind, the null zone is technically like a barrier between complex and standard, but it's not really a barrier. Like you can walk through it easily. You can go through it easily. The threshold, it's a seamless transition from standard to the complex. And so when that exists, what's the difference? At some point, the complex is going to have so many null zones that they're all, I don't know, maybe they will all connect and there's just not going to be a difference between the complex and standard. But would that be an apocalyptic scenario? I'm not sure, because Kane did say that the ending of the series was not going to be apocalyptic in nature. But if it does end with like the complex and standard fusing together to become one indistinguishable whole, then how is that not an apocalypse? You know, like it is ending the world as we know it. But yeah, like all of these questions, I think a lot of them are going to be answered. I think some of them are not, obviously, and that's fine. I don't need to see the purple table. I do want to see it, but I don't need to see it. Whatever my brain is like conjuring up with that imagery is probably scarier than anything that could be shown in the series. But yeah, these are just some questions I had about the Backrooms. Put your questions in the comment section because I also like want to know what you want to know. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.